Commander Jake Morrison stared at the main screen of his ship, the Harmony. The stars looked the same as always, tiny white dots scattered across the black space. He had been flying through space for 15 years, but today felt different. Something was wrong, or maybe something was very right. "Commander, we're getting a strange signal," said Dr. Lisa Grant from her station. She was the ship's science officer, a woman who could figure out almost anything. Her fingers moved quickly across her computer screen. "It's coming from the Kepler 442. System, we weren't supposed to find anything there." Jake walked over to her station. The Harmony was a big ship with 43 crew members. They were explorers sent by Earth to find new worlds and see what was out there in the dark. Most of the time, they found nothing but empty space and dead rocks floating around distant suns. "What kind of signal?" Jake asked. Lisa pressed a button, and sound filled the bridge. It was music, but not like anything Jake had heard before. A violin was playing a slow, sad song. The melody was beautiful, but seemed to carry deep sadness with it. Every person on the bridge stopped what they were doing to listen. "That's impossible," said Pete Williams, the chief engineer. He was a big man with rough hands who usually only cared about engines and power systems. "There's no human colony in that system. We would know about it." The music continued to play. Jake felt something strange in his chest, like the song was trying to tell him something important. The violin notes seemed to float through the ship's speakers and wrap around everyone who heard them. "How far are we from the source?" Jake asked. "About 6 hours at full speed," Lisa replied. She looked at her readings again. "Commander, this signal is definitely human. The instrument, the way it's played, even the mathematical patterns in the sound waves. It's from Earth." Jake made his decision quickly. "Change course. Take us to that system now." The Harmony turned through space like a giant whale changing direction in a vast ocean. The crew worked at their stations, but everyone kept thinking about the music. It played on repeat, the same beautiful and sad song over and over again. Hours passed. Jake stood on the bridge, drinking coffee that had gone cold. The music still played softly in the background. He had heard thousands of Earth songs during his time in space, but this one felt different. It felt alive. "Commander, we're approaching." "The source," said the ship's pilot, Amy Rodriguez. She was young but skilled, one of the best pilots in the fleet. "It's a ship, but it's old. Really old." On the main screen, a dark shape appeared against the stars. As they got closer, Jake could see it was indeed a ship, but not like any modern vessel. It was long and narrow, with solar panels that looked ancient and worn out. The hull was scratched and marked by years of floating through space. "That's a colony ship," Lisa said, reading her computer. "Type 7 class, used during the Great Exodus about 200 years ago. According to records, the ship Dawn's Hope left Earth in 2187 and never made contact again." Jake felt his heart beat faster. The Dawn's Hope was a legend among space travelers. It had carried 5,000 people away from Earth during the Plague Years, when humanity first began spreading to the stars. The ship had disappeared completely, and everyone assumed it was destroyed. "Life signs?" Jake asked. Lisa worked at her computer for several minutes. "Minimal power. Most of the ship is dead, but there's a section near the center that still has energy. And Commander, I'm reading one life sign. Very weak, but definitely human." The music suddenly stopped. The silence felt heavy and strange after hours of violin songs. Everyone on the bridge looked at each other with worry. "Take us closer," Jake ordered. "Prepare a boarding team." As the Harmony moved near the old colony ship, Jake could see more details. The Dawn's Hope looked like it had been through a war. Parts of the hull were missing, and several sections showed signs of fire damage. But somehow, a small part of the ship was still working. Jake put on his spacesuit along with Lisa and Pete. They crossed from the Harmony to the Dawn's Hope through a connecting tube. The old ship was dark and cold inside. Their flashlights made long shadows on the walls as they floated through empty corridors. "The life sign is coming from the cryogenic bay," Lisa said, checking her handheld computer. "This way." They followed her through twisted hallways filled with old equipment and personal belongings floating in zero gravity. Pictures of families, children's toys, and books drifted past them like ghosts in the past. The cryogenic bay was a large room filled with sleeping pods. Most of them were dark and broken, but one pod in the center still glowed with a soft blue light. Jake's heart stopped when he looked inside. A little girl was sleeping in the pod. She looked about 9 years old, with long blonde hair floating around her face. In her arms, she held an old wooden violin, clutching it tightly even in her deep sleep. "Her name is Karolina Protsenko," Lisa said, reading the pod's information screen. Age 9. She was put into cryogenic sleep when the ship's life support began failing. That was 197 years ago. Jake stared at the sleeping child. The violin in her arms was old and beautiful, made of dark wood with strings that somehow still looked perfect. A small computer next to the pod showed that it had been playing the music they heard, triggered by their ship's approach. "Can we wake her up safely?" Jake asked. Lisa checked the pod systems carefully. The cryogenic process is stable. She's been in perfect suspension. If we're careful, yes, we can wake her up. Pete looked around the destroyed bay. She's the only survivor. 5,000 people on this ship, and only one little girl made it. Jake made another quick decision. "We bring her aboard the Harmony. Lisa, prepare the medical bay. Pete, help me move this pod." As they carefully moved the sleeping girl and her violin to their ship, Jake wondered what story she would tell when she woke up. He also wondered about the music that had called them across space. How had a 9-year-old girl's violin reached them over such a vast distance? The Dawn's Hope continued to float silently in space as the Harmony carried its precious cargo home. Inside the medical bay, Karolina Protsenko slept on, holding her violin close, unaware that her simple song had just changed the course of human history. The medical bay on the Harmony was quiet except for the soft beeping of machines. Dr. Lisa Grant watched the monitors carefully as the cryogenic pod slowly warmed up. Inside, the little girl named Karolina was beginning to wake up after almost 200 years of sleep. Jake stood nearby, feeling nervous. He had rescued people from dangerous situations before, but never someone who had been asleep for so long. What would she think when she woke up? How could they explain that everyone she knew was gone? "Her vital signs are good," Lisa said softly. "Heart rate is increasing. Brain activity is normal. She should wake up in a few minutes." Pete Williams stood by the door, holding the old violin they had found with her. The wooden instrument looked even more beautiful under the medical bay's bright lights. The strings seemed to glow with their own inner light. Karolina's eyes opened slowly. They were blue like the deep ocean and filled with confusion. She looked around the room with fear, trying to understand where she was. When she saw the 3 adults watching her, she pulled the blanket up to her chin. "Where am I?" she whispered. Her voice was small and scared. She spoke with an accent that Jake had never heard before, mixing old Earth languages together. "You're safe," Lisa said gently, moving closer to the bed. "My name is Lisa. These are my friends Jake and Pete. We found you on your ship." Karolina looked around the room again. Everything was new and strange to her. The walls were smooth and white, and the lights were brighter than anything from her time. The machines made sounds she didn't understand. "Where is Mama? Where is Papa?" she asked, tears starting to fill her eyes. Jake felt his heart break. How could they tell a 9-year-old girl that her parents had been dead for 2 centuries? Lisa gave him a look that said they should wait, be gentle. "Can you tell us your name?" Lisa asked instead. "Karolina Protsenko," the girl said. "I play violin. Mama said I was very good." She looked around frantically. "Where is my violin? I need my violin." Pete stepped forward and carefully handed her the old instrument. As soon as Karolina touched it, she seemed to calm down. She held it close to her chest like it was her best. "Friend, how long was I sleeping?" she asked. Jake and Lisa looked at each other. There was no easy way to answer that question. "A very long time," Jake said finally. "Your ship had problems, and you had to sleep until someone could help you." Karolina nodded like this made sense to her. "Mama said the sleeping machine would keep me safe until we reached the new world." She looked up at them with hope in her eyes. "Are we there? Did we make it to the new world?" "Something like that," Lisa said carefully. Over the next few hours, they tried to help Karolina understand her situation without frightening her too much. They gave her food and water and let her explore the medical bay. She was fascinated by everything, touching the smooth walls and staring at the computer screens. But the most amazing thing happened. When she picked up her violin, Karolina sat on the edge of the medical bed and placed the violin under her chin. She closed her eyes and began to play. The song was the same one they had heard across space, the beautiful and sad melody that had led them to her ship. As she played, something incredible began to happen. The lights in the medical bay started to pulse gently with the music. The computer screen showed patterns that Lisa had never seen before. Even the ship's main computer, which was in a completely different part of the harmony, began to respond. "What's happening?" Pete asked, looking at the strange displays. Lisa was staring at her handheld computer in amazement. "The ship's systems are reacting to her music. Look at these readings. The frequency of her violin is creating some kind of resonance with our quantum processors." Jake didn't understand the science, but he could see that something special was happening. As Karolina played, the entire ship seemed to come alive in a new way. The lights were brighter, the air felt cleaner, and even the gravity felt more comfortable. The little girl finished her song and opened her eyes. She smiled for the first time since waking up. "The ship likes my music," she said simply. "Ships always like music. It makes them happy." "Ships don't have feelings," Pete said. But even as he spoke, he wasn't sure if that was true anymore. Karolina looked at him with the serious expression that only children can have. "All things have feelings. If you know how to listen, my violin helps me hear them." Over the next day, Karolina slowly began to trust her rescuers. Lisa helped her learn about the modern ship, showing her how the computers worked and explaining the different machines. Jake told her stories about space travel and the worlds humans had found among the stars. But Pete discovered something that amazed everyone. When he was working on the ship's engines, Karolina asked if she could watch. She sat nearby and played her violin while he worked. Somehow, the engines began running better than they ever had before. The power output increased, the efficiency improved, and all the small problems that had been bothering Pete for months simply fixed themselves. "I don't understand it," Pete told Jake later. "When she plays, it's like the ship's entire quantum structure becomes more stable. The harmonic frequencies from her violin seem to align perfectly with our technology." Jake was beginning to realize that Karolina was no ordinary child. "What kind of music did they teach on the colony ships?" "I checked the records," Lisa said. "The Dawn's Hope had a special music program. They believed that music was essential for human survival in space. They taught children that songs could help them communicate with the universe itself." That evening, Karolina played for the entire crew. Word had spread through the ship about the little girl with the magic violin, and everyone wanted to hear her music. She sat in the main meeting room, holding her old wooden violin, and played song after song. As she played, Jake noticed that the crew seemed more relaxed than they had been in months. People were smiling, laughing, and talking to each other more easily. Even the ship itself seemed to respond, with all systems running perfectly. When Karolina finished, she looked up at the 43 adults watching her. "When do we go home?" she asked. Jake realized that they had a big decision to make. Earth would want to study this child and her amazing ability. Scientists would want to understand how her music could affect advanced technology. But Jake also knew that Karolina was just a little girl who had lost everything and everyone she had ever known. "We're going home soon," he told her. "But Karolina, when we get there will be many people who want to meet you. They'll want to hear your music and learn about your violin." Karolina nodded seriously. "Mama always said my music was special. She said someday it would help people." She hugged her violin close. "I want to help people, but I want to stay with you too. You're my friends now." As Jake, little girl with her ancient violin, he wondered what would happen when they returned to Earth. He had a feeling that Karolina Protsenko was going to change everything, but he had no idea just how much. The Harmony arrived at Earth Station Alpha 3 weeks after finding Karolina. Jake had sent messages ahead, telling Earth Command about the little girl and her amazing violin. He thought they would be excited about the discovery, but he didn't. Expect what happened next out as soon as the Harmony docked. The station was filled with scientists, reporters, and government officials. Everyone wanted to see the child who could make machines work better with her music. Jake tried to protect Karolina from all the attention, but it was impossible. "I don't like all these people," Karolina whispered to Lisa as they walked through the crowded station corridors. She held her violin case tightly against her chest. "They look at me like I'm strange." "You're not strange," Lisa said gently. "You're special, but I know it's scary." Dr. Robert Hayes from Earth Command was a tall, serious man who wore expensive clothes and spoke in a loud voice. He took charge of everything as soon as they arrived. "The child must be studied immediately," he told Jake. "Her ability could change everything we know about human-machine interaction. We need to understand how her music affects quantum systems." Jake didn't like Dr. Hayes. The man talked about Karolina like she was a science experiment instead of a little girl who had lost her family. "She's not a laboratory specimen," Jake said firmly. "She's a child who needs time to adjust to our world." But Dr. Hayes ignored him. Within hours, Karolina was moved to a special research facility on the station. They gave her a nice room with toys and books, but Jake could see she was unhappy. She missed the Harmony and the crew who had become her friends. The real surprise came 2 days later. Jake was visiting Karolina when alarms began ringing throughout the station. Red lights flashed, and everyone ran to their emergency positions. "Incoming ships," announced the station commander over the communication system. "Multiple alien vessels approaching." "This is not a drill." Jake looked out the window of Karolina's room and saw something that made his blood turn cold. Huge alien ships were appearing in space around Earth. They were bigger than anything humans had ever built, and they looked both beautiful and terrifying. The largest ship was made of what looked like living crystal. It sparkled with rainbow colors and seemed to sing as it moved through space. Behind it came darker ships that seemed to bend light around them, making them hard to look at directly. "Who are they?" Karolina asked, pressing her face against the window. "I don't know," Jake said, but he was lying. He did know, and that's what scared him. These were ships from the Galactic Council, the group of alien races that ruled most of the known galaxy. Humans had met them before, but the aliens had never been impressed with Earth's people. Within an hour, alien representatives were aboard the station. Jake had never seen them in person before, and they were both amazing and frightening. The Zephyrians looked like walking crystals, tall and beautiful but cold. Their leader called himself High Conductor Christos, and when he spoke, his voice sounded like wind chimes in a storm. The Vortons were harder to see clearly. They seemed to be made of shadow and light, and Jake could feel them trying to read his thoughts. Their spokesperson, called Prime Mind Vex, communicated by putting thoughts directly into people's heads. "We have come for the noisemaker," Christos announced to the assembled humans. His crystal body rang like a bell with each word. "We have detected impossible resonance patterns from your primitive species. This cannot be allowed." Dr. Hayes stepped forward, trying to look important. If you're referring to the child, she is under Earth's protection. You have no authority here. The Zephyrian's crystal body glowed brighter. Your species makes random noise and calls it music. You have no understanding of true harmonic principles. Yet somehow, one of your young has created perfect universal frequencies. This violates everything we know about your kind. Prime mind vexes thoughts press into everyone's minds at once. The feeling was uncomfortable, like someone walking through Jake's brain with muddy boots. We have observed your species for 300 Earth years. You are emotional and chaotic. Your music is just organized noise. No human should possess harmonic abilities. Jake felt angry. These aliens had always looked down on humans, treating them like children who made too much noise. Now they were here to take away a real child. "You're not taking her anywhere," Jake said loudly. Christos turned his crystal head toward Jake. "You misunderstand, small human. We are not here to take. We are here to test. If this child truly possesses harmonic abilities, she must prove it according to galactic law." Dr. Hayes looked confused. "What kind of test?" "The harmonic trials," Prime Mind Vex explained, his thoughts making everyone's heads hurt. "Ancient. Tests that measure true understanding of universal frequencies. No species has completed them in over 10,000 years. And if she fails?" Jake asked, though he was afraid to hear the answer. "Then we will know that human claims are false," Christos said. "Your species will be restricted from deeper space travel until you learn proper respect for harmonic principles." Jake realized that this was about more than just Karolina. The aliens were using her as an excuse to put limits on all human space exploration. They had always been annoyed by human expansion into the galaxy. "I want to see the child now," Christos demanded. Dr. Hayes led the alien delegation to Karolina's room. Jake followed, worried about how a 9-year-old girl would react to these strange beings. Karolina was sitting on her bed, holding her violin. When the aliens entered, she looked up at them with curiosity instead of fear. "You're very pretty," she said to Christos. "You look like a rainbow made of glass." The Zephyrian seemed surprised by her reaction. Most humans were afraid when they first saw his kind. "Play," Christos commanded. "Show us these impossible frequencies your species claims to produce." Karolina looked at Jake, and he nodded encouragingly. She lifted her violin to her chin and closed her eyes. Then she began to play the song that had led them to her across space. The melody was Despacito, the ancient Earth song that had somehow survived on her colony ship. But when Karolina played it, something magical happened. The crystal walls of the station began to resonate with her music. The alien visitors stopped moving, their attention completely focused on the little girl and her violin. Even more amazing, Jake could suddenly feel what the aliens were feeling. The music was creating a bridge between their minds, letting them share emotions for the first time. The Vorthans, who usually communicated only through thoughts, began to experience pure feeling. The Zephyrians, who understood everything through mathematical formulas, felt the warmth of human emotion for the first time. As Karolina played, tears began forming in Jake's eyes. The music wasn't just beautiful, it was creating understanding between species that had never truly understood each other before. When the song ended, the silence felt heavy and full of possibility. Christos stood very still for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his crystal voice was softer than before. "This is not possible," he said. "Your primitive instrument should not be able to create cross-species emotional resonance. Our scientists have worked for millennia to achieve what this child does naturally." Prime Mind Vex's thoughts were different too, less invasive and more respectful. "We must understand how this occurs. The harmonic trials will reveal the truth." "When do the trials begin?" Dr. Hayes asked. "The child has 7 days to prepare," Christos announced. "Then we travel to the Nexus, where she will attempt what no being has achieved in 10,000 years. As the aliens left to prepare their ships, Jake knelt down beside Karolina. "Are you scared?" he asked. Karolina shook her head. "My violin will help me," It always knows what to do. She looked up at him with those serious blue eyes. Will you come with me? Yes, Jake promised. We'll all come with you. But as he looked out at the massive alien ships waiting in space, Jake wondered if they were about to discover something wonderful or walk into a trap that would change humanity's future forever. The week passed too quickly for Jake's liking. While the alien ships waited in space around Earth, everyone tried to help Karolina prepare for the harmonic trials. But nobody really knew what to expect. Dr. Hayes brought in Earth's best musicians and scientists to work with her. They taught her complex music theory and showed her advanced mathematical formulas. But Karolina just looked confused and sad. I don't understand all these numbers, she told Lisa during one of their practice sessions. Music isn't about numbers. It's about feelings. Lisa felt frustrated too. The scientists were treating Karolina like a computer that needed to be programmed. But the little girl worked in ways that didn't make sense to adult minds. That's when Jake had an idea. He remembered reading about Lieutenant Ben Parker, a soldier who had been a professional musician before joining the military. Ben was stationed on Earth Station Alpha, working as a security officer. Jake found Ben in the station's security office. He was a quiet man in his 30s with gentle eyes and callous fingers from years of playing guitar. I heard about the girl, Ben said before Jake could explain why he was there. The whole station is talking about her. You want me to help her prepare. The scientists aren't getting through to her, Jake explained. She needs someone who understands music the way she does, not just the technical parts. Ben nodded. Music is a language. You can't learn a language just by memorizing rules. You have to feel it. That afternoon, Ben met Karolina in one of the station's quiet rooms. He brought his old acoustic guitar, an instrument that was almost as old as Karolina's violin. Hi there, Ben said, sitting down across from her. I'm Ben. I heard you play beautiful music. Karolina looked at his guitar with interest. That's a nice instrument. Does it have feelings too? Ben smiled. Oh, yes. This guitar has been with me for 15 years. It's seen good times and bad times. It knows all my secrets. He started playing. A simple melody, something soft and friendly. Karolina listened with her head tilted to one side, the way she always did when she was really paying attention to music. Your turn, Ben said. Karolina picked up her violin and played along with his guitar. The two instruments seemed to talk to each other, creating harmonies that filled the room with warmth. That's it, Ben said. You don't think about it, you. Just let it happen. The music knows what it wants to do. Over the next few days, Ben worked with Karolina differently than the scientists had. Instead of teaching her rules, he helped her explore what she could already do naturally. The aliens say I have to pass some tests, Karolina told him during one of their sessions. But I don't know what they want me to do. Show me what happens when you play and really mean it, Ben said. Play like you're trying to tell someone something important. Karolina closed her eyes and began to play Despacito, the song that had become her signature. As she played, the lights in the room began to pulse gently. The computer screen showed patterns that looked like flowers blooming. But more than that, Ben could feel what Karolina was trying to say through her music. She was telling a story about being alone and afraid, but also about hope and the kindness of strangers. The violin was speaking in a language that went deeper than words. That's incredible, Ben whispered. You're not just playing music, you're communicating with everything around you. Everything has a song inside it, Karolina said simply. The ship, the computers, even the walls. I just helped them remember how to sing. Meanwhile, Captain Amy Rodriguez was chosen to command the human delegation to the Nexus. She was young, but had proven herself as one of Earth's best pilots. The responsibility of taking Karolina to face the harmonic trials weighed heavily on her shoulders. I've never seen anything like those alien ships, Amy told Jake as they prepared for departure. Their technology is thousands of years ahead of ours. What if this is all a trap? Jake had been wondering the same thing. Christos seemed genuinely surprised by Karolina's music. I think they really don't understand how she does what she does. That's what worries me, Amy said. If they can't understand it, they might try to destroy it. The human delegation prepared to leave on the ship Explorer, Earth's newest and most advanced vessel. Besides the crew, the ship carried Karolina. Jake, Lisa, Pete, Ben, and several other specialists thought Dr. Hayes wanted to come too, but Amy refused. This isn't a science expedition, she told him firmly. It's about protecting a child who's representing all of humanity. On their last night at Earth Station Alpha, Karolina couldn't sleep. She sat by the window in her quarters, looking out at the stars and holding her violin. Jake found her there and sat down beside her. Are you scared about tomorrow? He asked. A little, Karolina admitted. What if I can't do what they want? What if I'm not good enough? Jake put his arm around her small shoulders. You know what I think? I think you're exactly what the universe has been waiting for. Those aliens with all their advanced technology and knowledge, they've forgotten something important. What did they forget? How to feel, Jake said. They understand the mathematics of music, but they don't understand its heart. You do. You've always known that music is about connecting with others, about making them feel less alone. Karolina nodded thoughtfully. Mama used to say that music is like a bridge. It helps people walk across the empty spaces between them. Your mama was very wise. The next morning, the Explorer launched from Earth Station Alpha. The alien ships immediately surrounded them, creating a formation that looked like a flower with the human vessel at its center. As they traveled through space toward the Nexus, Karolina spent time with each member of the human crew. She played for them, and they told her stories about Earth and the worlds humans had discovered among the stars. Ben continued to work with her, but now he focused on helping her stay calm and confident. Remember, he told her, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be yourself. Your music is special because it comes from your heart. Lisa explained what little they knew about the Nexus. It's supposed to be a space station at the center of the galaxy, built by an ancient race that disappeared long ago. The Galactic Council uses it for important ceremonies and tests. Pete talked to her about the technical aspects of her ability. When you play, you're creating quantum resonance patterns that most of our computers can't even detect. But somehow, you do it naturally. I don't know what that means, Karolina said. It means you're amazing, Pete replied with a grin. As the journey continued, Jake noticed that the alien ships were behaving strangely. Instead of maintaining their rigid formation, they seemed to be moving closer to the Explorer. It was as if they were trying to hear something. They're listening, Amy reported from the bridge. Every time Karolina practices, the alien ships adjust their position. I think they're trying to understand her music. On the final day of their journey, Christos contacted the Explorer directly. Human child, his crystal voice rang through the ship's communication system. We have been observing your practice sessions. Your abilities are unexpected. The harmonic trials have not been attempted in 10,000 years because no species has shown the necessary combination of mathematical precision and emotional depth. Karolina picked up the communication device with small, steady hands. I'll do my best, she said simply. Music is supposed to bring people together, not keep them apart. There was a long silence. Then Christos spoke again, and his voice seemed softer than before. Perhaps, he said, we shall learn something new at the Nexus. As the ancient station appeared ahead of them, looking like a giant crystal cathedral floating in space, Jake felt a mixture of hope and fear. Tomorrow, a 9-year-old girl with a violin would attempt to prove that humanity deserved its place among the stars. The Nexus was unlike anything Jake had ever seen. The ancient space station stretched across the darkness like a living crystal cathedral, its walls pulsing with soft light that seemed to breathe. As the Explorer docked, Jake could feel vibrations through the ship's hull, as if the station itself was humming a very quiet song. Karolina pressed her face against the window, watching the rainbow patterns that danced across the Nexus's surface. "It's beautiful," she whispered, "and it's very old. I can hear it singing, but it sounds lonely." "Lonely?" Lisa asked. "How can a space station be lonely?" "It's been waiting for someone to understand its song," Karolina explained, clutching her violin case. "It wants to remember how to make music with others." The alien representatives met them at the docking bay. Besides Christos and Prime Mind Vex, there were delegates from 6 other species. Jake recognized some of them from his training: the tall, thin ethereals who looked like walking myths, the metal-skinned foundry masters, and others whose names he couldn't remember. "Welcome to the Nexus," Christos announced, his crystal body ringing like wind chimes. "This station has stood at the galaxy's heart for 50,000 years. Today, it will witness either your species' triumph or your failure. Captain Amy Rodriguez, step forward. What exactly will Karolina need to do?" "The harmonic trials consist of 5 tests," Prime Mind Vex explained, his thoughts pressing into their minds more gently than before. "Each test requires perfect mathematical harmony combined with emotional resonance. Most species can achieve one or the other, but never both together." They followed the aliens through corridors that seemed to grow and shift around them. The walls were covered in patterns that hurt to look at directly, geometric shapes that moved and changed when nobody was watching them. "The first trial awaits," Christos said, leading them into a vast chamber. The room was empty, except for a single chair in the center and a dying star visible through the transparent ceiling. The star was flickering like a candle in the wind, its light growing weaker with each pulse. "This star has burned for 6 billion years," an ethereal delegate whispered in a voice like wind through leaves. "It is dying, and its death will destroy 3 worlds with primitive life. If you can create the correct harmonic frequency, you can stabilize its nuclear fusion and give it another billion years of life." Jake felt his stomach drop. They were asking a 9-year-old girl to save an entire solar system with her violin. Karolina walked to the chair and sat down. She looked up at the dying star through the ceiling, and Jake could see tears in her eyes. "It's in pain," she said softly. "It doesn't want to die. It wants to keep shining for the little worlds that need its warmth." She lifted her violin and began to play. The melody started as Despacito, but it slowly changed and grew, becoming something new and magnificent. As she played, the chamber filled with harmonics that Jake could feel in his bones dot above them. The dying star began to pulse in rhythm with her music. Its flickering light grew stronger and steadier. By the time Karolina finished playing, the star was burning bright and stable again. "Impossible," breathed one of the foundry masters, his metal skin ringing like a bell. "She solved quantum stellar dynamics with emotional intuition. Our computers would need days to calculate those harmonics." "The second trial," Christos announced, though his crystal voice sounded less certain than before. The next chamber contained something that made Jake's head hurt to look at. It was an ancient artificial intelligence, a massive crystalline structure that had been dormant for thousands of years. Cables and circuits covered the walls like electronic vines. "This is the archive mind," Prime Mind Vex explained. "It contains the knowledge of 17 extinct civilizations, but it has been silent for millennia. No one has been able to reactivate it because it requires a consciousness bridge, a way to communicate directly with its quantum awareness." Karolina approached the huge crystal structure. She placed one small hand on its surface and closed her eyes. "Hello," she said softly. "I know you're sleeping, but would you like to wake up and talk to us?" She began to play again, this time a gentle lullaby that her mother had taught her long ago. As the music filled the chamber, lights began to appear deep inside the crystal. Structure. Patterns of information started flowing through the circuits like glowing rivers. Suddenly, a voice spoke from the archive mind, warm and curious. "Who calls to me with such beautiful harmony?" it asked. "I have been dreaming for so long. Your music reminds me of why I chose to preserve knowledge instead of letting it die with my creators. The alien delegates stared in amazement as Karolina continued to play, and the archive mind began sharing its vast libraries of information about the lost civilizations it remembered. 3 trials remain, Christos said, but now he sounded almost afraid. The 3rd trial required Karolina to harmonize with a space-time anomaly that had been trapped in the station for centuries. Her music somehow unraveled the twisted dimensions and set the anomaly free to return to its normal state. The 4th trial involved communicating with a hive mind species that had been unable to contact other life forms for thousands of years. Karolina's violin created a bridge between individual consciousness and collective awareness, allowing them to speak with other species for the first time. By the time they reached the 5th and final trial, Jake could see that the alien delegates were no longer skeptical. They were amazed and perhaps a little frightened by what they had witnessed. The final trial, Christos announced, is the most difficult. You must harmonize with the Nexus itself. They entered a chamber at the very heart of the station. Here, the walls were alive with energy patterns that moved like living creatures. In the center of the room stood a platform surrounded by crystalline structures that hummed with ancient power. The Nexus is not just a space station, Prime Mind Vex explained. It is a living entity, created by the first civilization to achieve perfect harmony between technology and consciousness. For 50,000 years, it has waited for someone who could understand its true nature. Karolina stepped onto the platform. As soon as her feet touched the surface, the entire station began to sing. The sound was beautiful and terrible at the same time, like the voice of something vast and lonely that had been waiting forever for a friend. It's not just lonely, Karolina said, tears streaming down her face. It's been trying to teach everyone who comes here, but nobody has been able to hear what it's really saying. She raised her violin and began to play Despacito one more time. But now the song was different, bigger, filled with all the harmonies she had learned during the other trials. As she played, the Nexus began to respond. The station's song joined with her violin, creating music that was beyond anything Jake had ever imagined. The walls came alive with patterns of light that told stories of civilizations that had risen and fallen across the galaxy. The music spoke of dreams and discoveries, of love and loss, of the endless search for connection across the vast emptiness of space. As the song reached its climax, Jake realized that something fundamental had changed. The music wasn't just beautiful. It was rewriting the basic laws of how consciousness and matter interacted. Karolina and the Nexus together were creating new possibilities for life and intelligence throughout the galaxy. When the music finally ended, the silence felt different. The Nexus still hummed, but now its song was joyful instead of lonely. Systems that had been dormant for millennia began to activate throughout the station. Christos stood very still for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was full of wonder. In 50,000 years, he said, no being has achieved what this human child has accomplished in a single day. She has not just passed the harmonic trials. She has awakened something that we thought was lost forever. Prime Mind Vex's thoughts touched their minds, but now they felt warm and welcoming instead of invasive. The universe has been waiting, he said, for someone who could remember that consciousness and matter are not separate things, but parts of the same cosmic song. Karolina climbed down from the platform, tired but smiling. She walked over to Jake and took his hand. Can we go home now? She asked. I want to play music for everyone. As they prepared to leave the Nexus, Jake realized that they weren't just returning home. They were bringing back something that would change everything. The knowledge that a 9-year-old human girl had reminded the galaxy how to sing. The journey back to Earth was unlike anything Jake had ever experienced. Word of Karolina's success at the Nexus had spread across the galaxy faster than their ships could travel. Everywhere they went, alien vessels joined their convoy, creating a parade of lights through space. Karolina spent most of the trip teaching. Representatives from dozens of species came aboard the Explorer to learn from her. She showed them how to listen to the songs that lived inside their own technology, how to feel the emotional patterns hidden in mathematical formulas. Music isn't just sounds. She explained to a group of metal-skinned foundry masters who had never understood the concept of melody. It's the way everything in the universe talks to everything else. Your machines want to sing with you, but you've forgotten how to hear them. She played her violin for them, and for the first time in their species' history, the foundry masters heard their own metal bodies resonating with harmony. Their skin began to ring like bells, creating music they had never known they could make. The ethereals learned that their misty forms could create wind-like harmonies that complemented solid instruments. The crystalline zephyrians discovered that their rigid mathematical thinking could dance with emotional expression instead of fighting against it. But the most amazing change happened with the Vorthons. Their hive mind had always made them feel separate from other species. But Karolina's music taught them how to share thoughts and feelings gently, like offering a gift instead of forcing an invasion. "Little teacher," Prime Mind Vex said to her one day, his mental voice now warm and kind, "you have shown us that individuality and unity are not opposites. They are harmonies waiting to be discovered." When they finally reached Earth, Jake was shocked by what they found. The planet was surrounded by ships from every corner of the galaxy. Humans and aliens were working together on projects that would have been impossible just months before. Dr. Hayes met them at Earth Station Alpha, but he looked different now. Instead of his usual serious expression, he was smiling and carrying what looked like a simple wooden flute. "Everything has changed," he told Jake excitedly. When news of the trials reached Earth, something awakened in our own technology. Our computers started creating music, our engines began singing, and our people remembered abilities they didn't know they had. He held up the flute. "I haven't played music since I was a child, but yesterday my computer started humming, and I realized it wanted me to sing along." Karolina hugged Dr. Hayes. "I told you machines have feelings too." The real celebration began when they brought Karolina to the planet's surface. Every major city on Earth had prepared concerts where humans and aliens would perform together for the first time. But Karolina had a different idea. "I want to play for everyone at the same time," she told the assembled world leaders and alien ambassadors. "Not just the people in the big cities, but everyone everywhere." "That's impossible," said President Martinez of the World Council. "How can one violin reach every person on Earth and every alien ship in space?" Karolina smiled with the confidence that only children possess when they know something adults haven't figured out yet. "The same way my song reached you from the old colony ship. Music doesn't need machines to travel. It travels through the connections between all living things." They set up a simple stage in Central Park, the same place where musicians had played for centuries. As Karolina walked onto the stage carrying her old violin, Jake realized that thousands of people had gathered not just in the park, but in every city on Earth. Alien ships had positioned themselves in orbit so their crews could see the surface. But more than that, something else was happening. The Nexus, awakened by Karolina's music, had somehow connected itself to every piece of technology in the galaxy. Computers, spaceships, communication devices, and even simple tools were all linked together in a vast network that could carry music across impossible distances. Karolina sat on a simple wooden chair in the center of the stage. She looked out at the crowd, then up at the stars where millions of alien beings waited to hear her play. "This song is for everyone who ever felt alone," she announced, her small voice somehow reaching every corner of the galaxy through the connected network. "It's for my mama and papa, who taught me that music can bring people together across any distance. And it's for all the new friends I've made who helped me remember that the universe is full of songs waiting to be sung." She raised her violin and began to play Despacito. But this time, the song was more than just a melody. As Karolina played, every connected device in the galaxy began to harmonize with her violin. Computers created rhythms, spaceship engines provided bass notes, and communication arrays added crystalline high tones. On Earth, people who had never played instruments found themselves humming along perfectly. In space, alien crews discovered they could add their own voices to the growing symphony. The foundry masters rang like bells, the ethereals whistled like wind, and the Zephyrians created mathematical patterns that turned into pure musical beauty. Jake felt tears running down his face as he listened. The music was telling the story of every species in the galaxy, weaving their individual songs into one magnificent tapestry of sound. He could hear the loneliness of ancient civilizations, the joy of first contact between different species, and the hope of a future where no one would ever have to sing alone. As the song reached its climax, something unprecedented happened. Every person and alien being in the galaxy was connected through the music, sharing thoughts and feelings without fear or invasion. For one perfect moment, the entire galaxy experienced unity without losing individuality. When Karolina finally lowered her violin, the silence that followed was not empty but full of possibility. Then slowly applause began, not just from the crowds on Earth or the alien ships in space, but from the universe itself. Stars seemed to pulse with approval, and even empty space carried the echo of celebration. Crystals materialized on the stage. Beside Karolina, his crystal form glowing brighter than ever before. "Little conductor," he said, his voice now warm instead of cold, "you have given the galaxy something we thought was lost forever. You have reminded us that logic and emotion, mathematics and music, technology and consciousness are not separate things, but parts of one cosmic symphony." The Galactic Council, which had ruled through rigid hierarchy for millennia, restructured itself that day. Instead of a council of separate species making decisions through conflict, they became a symphony orchestra with Karolina as their conductor. But Karolina herself remained wonderfully, perfectly human. She still carried her old violin everywhere, still played simple songs that made complex beings remember how to feel joy, and still asked questions that revealed wisdom adults had forgotten. Jake watched her a year later, now 10 years old, as she conducted a concert on a distant world where two species had been at war for centuries. Her music had helped them find peace by teaching them to hear the harmony hidden in their differences. "Do you ever miss being just a little girl with a violin?" Jake asked her afterward. Karolina thought about this seriously, as she always did. "I'm still just a little girl with a violin," she said finally. "The only difference is that now I have friends all across the galaxy who like to sing along." As Jake looked up at the stars, where ships from hundreds of species traveled together in harmony, he realized that Karolina was right. In a universe that had almost forgotten how to sing, a 9-year-old human child had reminded them of the most important truth of all, that no matter how advanced or different they became, every living being carried music in their heart. And sometimes, all it took was one simple song to help them remember how to let that music out. The galaxy had found its voice again, and it was singing in perfect, joyful harmony.